homie.
What's up, strongest men, women, and children from blocks all around the world? I am my block's strongest man, and it's time now for the Eddie Hall versus Thor Bjornsson boxing match predictions. You may recall that I did a prediction way back in olden times when this fight was first announced, and here's what I said back then. So it'll be interesting to go through some of the analysis and information that we've gathered since that time to see if my original prediction that Eddie Hall wins by stoppage due to a broken rib or other injury in the fourth round, whether that comes to pass or not. So let's have a look. So first, let's talk about stamina. There's been a lot of talk about these guys are both going to gas out in the first round, and I think that's a bit of a myth. Number one, due to their training, almost 2 years of training here, they're not going to be in the kind of shape stamina-wise that they were when they first retired from strongman. They're both a lot lighter than they were. And secondly, the circumstances. So I've heard that these are actually 6 2-minute rounds. They are not 3-minute rounds, and that makes a big difference. So 6 2-minute rounds is 12 minutes. If you have 1 minute rest in between, that would be an additional 5 minutes. So that would be 17 minutes total fight time, right? As opposed to 6 3-minute rounds, which would be 18 minutes plus the 5 minutes rest in between, 23 minutes. So it's substantially less time in the ring, 17 minutes as opposed to 23 minutes. Now, if you were thinking of this as a full normal heavyweight championship fight, which would be 12 rounds of boxing times 3 minutes is 36 minutes, plus 11 minutes, 1 minute of rest in between each round is 47 minutes. So fighting 17 minutes instead of 47 minutes is literally 36.17% of the time normal heavyweights would typically fight each other in a championship fight. So you have to kind of take that into perspective. These guys were never going to fight 12 rounds, but I did think they were going to fight full 3-minute rounds, and they're not. So that is, a substantial knock off of, again, 17 minutes total in the ring as compared to 23 minutes. It's a decent percentage less time they have to spend in the ring. Putting that together with the training they've done over the years, I think stamina-wise, they'll be fine. Thor did start to tire in his fight versus Simon Vallily as early as round 2, though, but, it didn't really slow him down or affect his approach at all, so you can be tired and breathing a bit, and as long as you're executing your game plan, it doesn't have an effect, that's fine. Thor's also been very patient defensively, backing away, sort of putting out his arm to judge distance, deflecting, and whatnot. And he doesn't do everything perfect defensively, but he's been a lot more impressive in that respect than I had seen at the beginning of his training for sure. So I don't see Thor trying to implement a plan that's going to tire him fast or quickly. Like he's generally pretty patient in his movement and deliberately slow in his movement around the ring. So I don't see him tiring out. I think Thor will be overwhelmed by a variety of I think Thor would be overwhelmed by an accumulation of hard punches before he ever gets too tired to continue. Then speaking of Eddie Hall's stamina, we all know he's been swimming all his life. He does cardio. He has been running quite a bit in preparation for this fight as far as what he's shown us. Also, the idea that Eddie's angry and he's going to come kind of spill his whole energy all at once and come in like a whirlwind throwing crazy punches, I don't think is going to happen at all. I think Eddie will close the distance, throw his combo, then back away, walk around a little bit, take a few steps, come back in and go for another combo and whatnot. He seems pretty controlled with his combinations, whether they're 2, 3, 4 punches, whatever. I don't think he's going to be reckless at all like some people think. So, combine those two things together, and Thor being deliberately trying to learn how to box and be patient with his movement, and Eddie, not being the reckless fireball that I think everyone thinks is going to happen. I think stamina will be just fine. So let's talk about technique a bit.
As he did against Stephen, using
Thor
his jab
versus Simon Vallily, doing sort of the movement that I mentioned, pawing out that jab to judge distance, backing away easily. And thank you to Strength Universe for sharing this awesome video. I don't want to play too much of the video because you should go over to Strength Universe, give them the subscribe, give them the like, and watch all the way through. It helps the algorithm for all of us creators. So I'll just skip ahead a bit. So that was round 1. And then you'll see as we get into round 2, Thor starting to, again, breathe a little heavy, get a little crazy, gets staggered by one punch, but he does end up getting a knockdown against Vallily, although I think that is mostly because Vallily is there as target practice for Thor. He's not throwing very much, he's just moving around him. Yeah, so I'm guessing Simon Vallily maybe was told kind of be a bit of a tough target for Thor, move around a lot, don't throw too much, because that's what he seemed to do in round one, just a lot of posturing. And I know that's part of boxing, kind of looking for your shots, but it seemed a bit excessive there. To Thor's credit, though, he got a knockdown. He did get what looked like a legitimate knockdown, so there you go. The fight against Devin Larratt was a bit different, and here we have to give credit to Big Law's official for this footage. And again, I'm not going to show, I'll show a couple of seconds of it. You should go over to Big Law, subscribe to his channel, like the video, and watch all of their stuff if you haven't already. If you're into strongman at all, you're already doing that, but I need to remind you, number one source in strongman reporting. I'm happy to be number two to Big Law's. So if you look at it here, just this was a lot more of a mess than the Vallily fight. Thor kind of a bit all over the place. Devin Larratt was actually given a standing knockdown for falling on the ropes by himself. Thor actually missed both punches, which was weird. And then, again, I don't want to show too much of the footage here. You should go over to Big Law's channel and watch, but kind of just advancing a bit, we'll show just a few seconds. And, you know, Thor closes distance, but he does it in the same slow two-step way every time. It's predictable. Devin Larratt was holding a lot. And then the fight ends with both of them kind of not really landing too many punches. And Thor lands one. You'll see it here. It's a cracking left hook, I believe. Let's see. You'll see. There it is. The really clean one. And the ref stops the fight, what I thought was prematurely. Like, probably because Devin Larratt's not a boxer, so the ref is being overly cautious. And if this were a real boxing match with real boxers, they'd let it go a little longer. But definitely by boxing standards, I felt it was a premature stoppage. Like, give him a standing 8 count, but he didn't even go down, like, or didn't even seem that close to going down. So it seemed a little strange. But anyway, protect our national treasure, Devin Larratt. He certainly deserves it after everything he's succeeded and earned in his career. So that was that fight. So then let's talk about Eddie Hall a little bit. This is really old footage. So this is from December 2020. It's hard to find kind of technique-based sparring with him because he didn't show a lot of it. But even back here, you see, you know, he has said publicly very recently that technique doesn't matter. But, you know, I think his accuracy is good, as you can see. Like, he seems to be hitting spots that count for the most part. Movement's good. Again, his nemesis is his hands are down way too often. So, but aside from that, some good stuff. And he's way better, you know, in some more recent clips than in this one. This one's just a little bit more robust and shows more of a variety. So from the Eddie Hall standpoint, I think his accuracy is pretty good. His punch variety is pretty good. And we'll get into punching power in a moment, but I wanted to talk technique first. So again, Eddie's offense, I think, more effective than Thor's. His defense leaves a little to be desired, although he has shown videos where he's been training his neck muscles to sort of be a better shock absorber, to take punches better and whatnot. So we'll see. I mean, do I totally go along with his theory that technique doesn't matter at all? No, of course not. Like, that's crazy talk. But he's not fighting a professional boxer, so, you know, the technique that he does have may be enough to overcome what Thor's doing. And I think that Eddie's assertiveness or aggressiveness in coming forward, combined with Thor's tendency to back right up as soon as a punch is coming and try to counter it, although typically unsuccessfully because his hand speed is too slow, I think is going to play in Eddie's favor. So next, let's talk about punching power. And to do that, I found a really great website I'd like to give credit to. It's boxingscience.co.uk. And you should go, I'll add this link to the description below. You should check out this website because it breaks down everything beautifully here. It actually has a great quote here. It talks about how generating force in boxing punching works, right? And how kind of the physics work. So it talks about punching forces being measured in newtons, and kind of the higher the newtons, the greater the force. So punching forces in amateur boxing are about 2,500 newtons, and the way they figure that out is if you weigh 70 kilograms, you'll exert about 700 newtons of force on the ground just standing still, and the punching force that an amateur boxer typically of that weight generates is about 3.5 times that. And so you can figure out, based on these guys' technique and ability to generate fast punches with snap, which we'll get into here, where you where you can go there. And so if you check out my notes, I took a great quote from that website. It says, if you have more mass, weight, and you can move that mass quickly, which is momentum, you'll create more impulse on your target. So So that's kind of what we want to discuss here. So as I wrote, Thor has slightly more mass based on the weigh-in. He's 152 kilograms as opposed to Eddie's 142.2 kilograms. So it's 6.89% heavier. And he'll also be punching downward. So that will allow gravity to sort of aid the force as a vector component of his punch based on the angle of delivery, right? So when you are applying a force at an angle, that angle has to be taken into account on how much of that force is actually delivered, but Thor's delivering it downward based on his height advantage, and Eddie would be delivering it upward, which is a disadvantage if he decides to headhunt, meaning throwing a vast majority of his punches to the head, which I think would be a mistake. I think Eddie can do incredible damage to the body if he mixes up his attack, and I don't know, I think he'd be smart to do so. So let's check out the science behind the punch. Well, they talk about punch power, and of course, that's not everything in boxing, but this is what we're trying to break down in this particular discussion. Saying that the impulse and momentum is what matters. Improving your speed, strength, and explosiveness through specific types of training that can do that will help you have a more powerful punch. So as you break it down, force times time and mass times velocity is the breakdown. So producing force quickly and moving mass through time or through distance quickly is what will generate a more powerful punch. So it talks about how you can improve those things, and then it goes into the basic physics behind it. So again, boxingscience.co.uk, I'll put the link below. You should definitely check this out. It's very, very interesting. So it turns out, it talks about the impulse-momentum relationship. So, and here's your quote that I had before. If you have more mass and can move that mass quickly, you'll create more impulse on your target. And they talk about how force is measured, as we said, and then they talk about speed. So to make the force values even more impressive than what you can just by having a certain mass, your punch has to be delivered quickly. And so they show this in a particular video clip here, which I'll show you real quick. They talk about, look at the man on the left, how quickly he's delivering that combination, combined with the fact that his opponent's walking into it, he just crumbles underneath it. So his right hand is getting there in 0.183 seconds, as they say here. Talk about the elephant and the rocket. So you either have lots of mass or lots of speed, or the best of both worlds is having both of them, right? And then they talk about how to increase your snap with effective mass, and that means at the end of your punch, being able to tense your whole body, or at least tense your arm, shoulder, and upper body, such that the punch snaps at the end and provides an even greater impulse. And these analogies to talk about how I think all of this will affect Eddie and Thor. They talk about the kinetic chain here as well. So during a punch, saying that the force is actually generated from the floor and generated from the foot to fist through a rapid set of kinetic chain elements in the body. So to deliver hard, fast punches, the lower body must produce a large amount of force extremely quickly. So when I saw that, I decided to, let me check on some of the other stuff Eddie was doing, because my first inclination, and we'll get to this one about Thor in a minute, but my first inclination was, well, Eddie's been doing a lot of core work. Like at the beginning of his training, you saw him doing a lot of ab work. He has visible abs. He has large solid obliques. Like he definitely has a very, very strong core. But is he using it in a torsion type manner? So my other notes about Thor. So despite all his technique improvements, he still doesn't move the mass of his arm quickly, at least not from what I've seen, and was often whiffing punches, as you saw earlier, even on the very mildly trained Devin Larratt, because they didn't get there fast enough. So it could also be a reaction time issue, or it could be, his brain just needs a second or a larger fraction of a second to realize there's a stationary target there and hit it. I feel like in watching those fights with Thor, he seemed a lot better against Valili than he did against Devin Larratt, and that may be because he's learning textbook boxing and learning all the right techniques, so he expects the right techniques coming back at him all the time. And so, when he sees that in a professional boxer, he knows more how to react and how to work around it, whereas with Devin Larratt, who was an unorthodox style, he had all kinds of problems because he couldn't adapt quickly. He hasn't been boxing long enough to have instincts in that respect. And I think that may be a problem against Eddie as well, because as you've seen, hands down, like Eddie doesn't, and he's got an incredible snap on his punches. Like Eddie, I think, does stiffen up at the end of his punches. Eddie Hall doesn't fight in an orthodox boxer style either. He's also very new to this, so that may be difficult for Thor to handle in a similar manner that Devin Larratt was difficult for him to handle, except that Eddie's going to overwhelm Thor with offense, unlike Devin Larratt. So that being said, the other discussion about generating force was this video here, where Teofimo Lopez, who is a multi-world champion boxer, traded punches with Thor. And here you can go to the Mayweather channel, definitely subscribe to them, which I'll do right now. We'll like the video and watch all their stuff all the way through. If this is in fact Floyd Mayweather, what's up, Floyd? You know, the greatest boxer I've ever seen. So everybody talks about Sugar Ray Robinson, but the greatest boxer I've ever seen is Floyd Mayweather. So all accolades to Floyd, and definitely go support his channel. Lots of great content there. So again, I'll just show a couple of seconds here because you should go here and watch the whole video on the Mayweather channel. But if you see that punch, basically, so Teofimo Lopez lets Thor hit him like 100% strength in the abs, and they build up to it. He says, you know, hit me 25, then 50, and whatnot. And Teofimo Lopez takes like a little bit of a step back, and I don't think it was on this channel, but on another channel where I saw this video, I heard him say, like, oh, I don't know how anybody's going to take that. Wow. And I'm thinking, you just took it, and you literally weigh fewer pounds than Thor weighs kilograms. Like, I Googled Teofimo Lopez, he's 135 pounds. So if he can take it and barely be moved back, like, yeah, it's a hard punch, and yeah, he's a multi-world champion, but at a way, way, way lower weight. So, you know, I'm sure it's a hard punch, but we shouldn't draw the conclusion that it's this otherworldly thing that's going to do the same thing to Eddie Hall. So that's my 2 cents on Thor's punching power. I just think it could be great, but he doesn't deliver it anywhere near with enough speed. And especially in this case, these were very controlled circumstances where he had a guy standing there for 10 seconds waiting for him to wind up and punch. That's never going to happen in an actual boxing match. Yeah, so I mean, you can't compare a 135-pound world champion boxer to whatever Eddie is, 323 pounds, 142.2 kilograms. It's just, it's night and day difference. Like, Thor, here's my conclusion. Thor punches hard, yes. Eddie's punches can be life-threatening, and they look that way even before he learned any technique. So let's talk about emotional state now. So Thor has remained calm throughout his 3 prep fights. He never seemed like really too much out of sorts, but they weren't against a guy he hates. They were against, you know, 2 exhibition fights, well, 3 exhibition fights, Stephen Ward, Simon Vallily, and Devin Larratt, and all of them were fairly friendly relationships, right? He was also calm through most of the face-off and press conference until he wasn't. I feel like Eddie's a psychological mastermind who knows when to inject his death blow sort of discussion to get Thor out of sorts, and it seems to work every time. Like, Eddie has these 2 or 3 things in his pocket, and then he pulls them out right at the end of a discussion to leave Thor, like, upset as they walk away. And so, you know, Eddie also seems very angry about what happened in 2017, but to be honest, I don't blame him. Thor smeared his victory in an area where Thor can fully empathize because he went through all the same hard work and dedication that Eddie did. So usually, at least I do, I get upset when people I care about smear me, and they were friends and you know, colleagues, I guess you could call them in a way. So if somebody who knows nothing about you smears you, you brush it off. Tomorrow you don't remember it. But when somebody you care about smears you, it really means something. And then the other point I'll make is, if you're thinking Eddie's not going to actually play mind games like he always does in the ring itself during the fight, just look at what Floyd Mayweather and Sugar Ray Leonard were able to accomplish, kind of getting into their opponents' heads mid-fight. Like Sugar Ray Leonard with the bolo punches, and Floyd Mayweather talking to the commentators while he's beating his opponent. It's, you know, don't leave it out of the realm of possibility that Eddie's going to be trash-talking in the middle of the fight trying to get into Thor's head. And then the other thing I'll say about the comment about Eddie fighting angry, Eddie has kind of had 5 years to average his anger over that time, so to speak, like, if that makes any sense. So I think he's had time to kind of harness it and get control of what he wants to get accomplished, whereas Thor just got pissed off yesterday by a comment Eddie made about his mother, which seemed honestly innocuous to me, but it really seemed to bother Thor quite a bit. So if Thor fights with his newfound skills, he has a chance. If Thor fights angry, he has no chance. If Eddie fights angry, Thor still has no chance. So, you know, it seems like Thor has to fight with his newfound skills to make this a decent fight. I still think Eddie wins. Like, I won't bury the lead anymore. Like, the end of this video is going to say, I think Eddie wins, and I'll give you some more evidence why. In a moment, I'll give you actually a round-by-round breakdown of why. So, there was actually also a YouTube video, it's called Believing Bruce, that talks about the body language suggesting that Eddie would be at a disadvantage. So you should go over to Believing Bruce, subscribe to his channel by clicking that button right there, like the video and watch his stuff as well. Really, really interesting science-based sports performance content that is going to teach us all quite a bit. So you should go subscribe to Believing Bruce and follow him on Instagram as well. It's right up here, Believing Bruce 360. Yeah, I don't know him at all, but I found a lot of useful information here. So he was talking about Eddie basically his natural stance or position being with his arms crossed. He's talked a lot to the audience instead of directly to Thor. You may notice this of me as well. I have a problem with direct eye contact too. I have to work really hard at it. Basically, he's saying like he doesn't want to look Thor straight in the face because it's a confidence type thing. And maybe it is. Like maybe Eddie's not a confident one-on-one speaker, but I don't think that means he's not a confident one-on-one fighter. So I wouldn't necessarily draw that conclusion. But as you can see, Believing Bruce, he was with Teddy Atlas. His credentials are very, very good. But yeah, you can see here, right there, Eddie has the arms crossed. And then when Thor calls him a fat pig, Eddie's pitch of his voice goes way up. So this analysis I found really, really interesting. I don't necessarily agree that all of it will go to the same conclusions that, Bruce was saying Eddie's basically at a disadvantage for these particular reasons. But then he also threw in that Eddie seemed to systematically break Thor down with the deadlift argument into making Thor totally explode, and which is the argument I've been making all along. Like, I think, emotionally speaking, yes, Eddie's been angered for a while, but has had time to harness and plan around it, whereas he seems to be able to piss Thor off at will, like with these little jabs that he has kind of set up, and he knows when he's doing one that's just a joke, like the double dip one, and he knows when he's doing one that's going to really get Thor out of sorts and unfocused. So, emotionally speaking, that's where we are. So that being said, let's do this round by round breakdown and see if my new one matches this old one. So here we go. So here's what I think happens. It's a 6-round fight again, 2-minute rounds. I do not think it goes the distance. I feel like we need to break down each round into the 4 ways of measuring who's winning a boxing round. I don't necessarily think they're going to measure them that way, but hopefully the end result is similar to this. So you have effective aggression, and I basically measured it by being aggressive in the first place, and is your aggression effective? Eddie Hall's going to be the effective aggressor in all the rounds that they end up fighting, so he definitely wins that category. Ring generalship I'm going to give to Thor for round 1. So I think Thor's going to stick and move, try to circle around and try to keep Eddie at bay and maybe get the better of him in ring generalship, meaning making the fight go at the pace and in the style that you want. So I think Thor will get that in round 1. Eddie takes over in round 2, though, and starts to overwhelm him with lots of punches, I think, and starts to really get inside. Hard, clean punches Eddie will have more of than Thor in every round that they fight. And then you go into the different kinds of defense. So you have footwork, and I think Thor's footwork will be better in both rounds. Blocking, I think Thor as well, because he backs up with the arm here and sort of deflects. And then parrying, rolling, and slipping can go either way. Eddie's pretty good with rolling and slipping from what I've seen. His parrying I'm going to give to Thor as well. So overall, taking all the things into account, a slight edge to Thor in the defense area. Just because... Well, partially because I don't think Eddie will be on the defense very often, to tell you the truth. I don't think he's going to back up very much. And then I think if there's any sort of stamina problem at all, Eddie's way more likely to fight through it than Thor is. Thor did a good job with Valili, though, but again, that guy wasn't fighting back very much. Eddie's going to fight back a lot. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So that's rounds 1 and 2. I think round 1 I have a tie round, so if I have to pick somebody... because rounds are rarely scored a tie, I'll say Eddie. I'll say Eddie. Because even though Thor has the better defense, Eddie's still going to get enough punches through to do damage. Round 2, I think, is clearly a 10-9 round for Eddie, where he starts to implement his game plan. Round 1 was enough warming up, and he starts to really close the distance and cause some damage. And I think by round 3, Eddie's overwhelming Thor with an overwhelming amount of punishment to the point where I'm changing my mind. So... back then, when a year and a half ago, whenever I did this prediction the first time, I said the fight would be stopped by an Eddie body punch where he breaks one of Thor's ribs. I rethought about that, so I'm not convinced Eddie's going to access the body as much as he should. He may headhunt a little bit. And also, like, if you watch the Devin Larratt fight, as I mentioned earlier, I felt like it was stopped a bit prematurely. And why do we think this fight won't be stopped prematurely? Like, why do we think that a referee is going to let 2 non-boxers beat each other till they're knocked out. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I started thinking about that today, and I think the ref's going to stop the fight due to accumulation of punishment before anybody gets knocked out, maybe even before anybody gets knocked down. So I wrote here, Eddie Hall by third round, possibly overcautious stoppage to avoid excessive injury, right? He's going to land enough punches to make his point, and the ref's going to stop it, I think. That's what I think will happen. He may have one knockdown by then, but I don't think so. I think it'll be stopped before that. So that's my prediction for the fight. Eddie Hall by third round stoppage due to accumulation of punishment, perhaps before even one knockdown ever happens. So he'll be up 2019 by that point. That's the prediction. Fight happens in about 5 hours now. So make sure to go to Segi.tv and watch it. It's free. And we'll see you after the fight to break down everything that happened. And of course, until next time, ciao, homie.